Being a young growing-up girl, Ekaete was living with her grandmother after the death of her parents, living in the small community. The small community tucked in the heart of Calabar had long been plagued by the activities of ruthless gangs, and at the center of it all was Williams, a man feared by many. Ekaete was just a young girl when Williams and his gang stormed into her family's compound one morning during one of their notorious raids. They raided her grandmother's home, and Williams went into her room and harassed her. She had tried to fight back, but Williams was a man of power, unquestionably untouchable. That night, her world shattered. She was violated, stripped of her innocence in a moment of brutality, and left to carry the weight of a sin she never committed. When the dust settled, she was left with nothing but the haunting memories and a child growing in her womb. At 16, Ekaete was faced with a choice. Her family, disgusted by the shame of her situation, urged her to end the pregnancy. The midwife whispered of herbs that would make it all go away. But every time Ekaete pressed a hand against her stomach, a strange resistance held her back. The child inside her refused to be erased. She was a symbol of pain, yet something about her existence felt stubbornly alive. 9 months later, on a cold Harmattan morning, Ekaete gave birth to a baby girl. She named her Ngoyo, which is Ngoyonke, meaning I didn't desire for. From the very moment she took her first breath, she was unwanted. Ekaete tried, she really did, but every time she looked at Ngoyo's face, all she could see was Williams, the monster who had ruined her life. The child's sharp nose, her wide eyes, the firm set of her lips, all reminders of the past Ekaete wanted to forget. She fed her because she had to, load her heart of obligation. But love, that was something she could never give. Ngoyo grew up in a home filled with silence and resentment. She learned quickly that she was different from the other children in the community. Mothers kissed their daughters, whispered soft words to them, but Ekaete's touch was always cold, her words clipped and distant. Ngoyo wanted to understand why, but the answer were always met with anger. "Why don't you love me?" she once asked, her young voice trembling. Ekaete's eyes darkened. "Because you are the cause I never asked for." Ngoyo never asked again. By the time she turned 14, Ngoyo had heard enough whispered to pieces the truth together. Her father was a ghost in the streets of Ikon, a name spoken in fear and hushed voices. The man who had ruined her mother was a legend among criminals, a king in the underworld, and she was his blood. Something inside her burned to know the truth, not just from the mouth of the market women or the gossiping neighbors, but from the man himself. She needed to see him, to understand who she was beyond her mother's hatred. One evening, as the sun sank low, bleeding its colors into the sky, Ngoyo left home and walked into the heart of Ikon, to the place where danger had a name. She found Williams in a small, dimly lit bar, surrounded by men who lived on the edge of the law. For a moment, she was frozen. This was him, the man whose existence had shaped her own. Older than he had imagined, his face hardened by years of violence, his eyes sharp like a predator's. She stepped forward, her voice shaking. "I'm Ngoyo." William lifted his gaze lazily, studying her. Something flickered in his eyes. And who are you? After a series of explanations which led to a hard struggle for acceptance, William said, I can't be your father. Leave my side now. Ngoyo had imagined this moment 1,000 times, rehearsed the words she would say, but standing there, she could feel that the weight of reality crashing down. This was not a father. This was just a man capable of love. He was a king in his own world, and she was nothing but an accident of fate. Did you ever think about me? She asked. William chuckled, taking a low sip of his drink. No. The answer stung more than she expected. Before she could say another word, chaos erupted. Gunshots rang through the air, and the bar exploded into a maze of shouting and grumbling bodies. Ngoyo was shoved to the ground as bullets ripped through the wooden walls. She heard William's curse, his voice sharp with urgency, but before he could move, his body jerked violently. One shot, then another. Ngoyo watched in horror as blood bloomed across his chest. His eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came out. The king of Ikom, a man who ruled the street with an iron fist, fell lifelessly to the ground. Panic seized her. If they knew she carried his blood, she would never be safe. She scrambled to her feet and ran, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She didn't stop running. Even when her lungs burned, even when the street blurred into unfamiliar paths. She ran until Ikom was nothing but a memory in the dust. When she finally stopped, gasping for breath in a neighboring village, she realized she had lost everything. Her mother had never wanted her. Her father was dead, and she was alone in a world that had never truly been hers. The night was heavy with rain once again, and as Ngoyo stood beneath the dark sky, she made a silent vow. She would live, not as the daughter of a monster, not as the shadow of a crime, but as something new, someone free. And so, with nothing but the cloth on her back and fire in her heart, she disappeared into the night, leaving behind the ghost of Ikom and the story that was never hers to tell.